Hey everyone, it's Clint. Did you miss me? I hope so, because I've been just off of making videos for the past week, and that was a conscious decision because I had to fulfill my crowdfunding campaign, Downcast. I did so. I sent out the last batch of packages to the post office today, and so we're in business. Everything has been shipped. We're just now waiting for the digital copies. I want to wait the 10 days or so for all the packages to arrive to the physical backers, and also make sure if there's any wrong addresses. I'm sure there'll be some of those that pop up and I get return packages, or any number of things that could possibly go wrong. It will go wrong, I'm sure. And so I want to wait for those things to pan out. I don't really feel like I'm done yet, but technically, yeah, I am done. So I learned a lot of things. One, fulfilling your own campaign with roughly 1,000 backers is absolutely insane. And doing it within a week is crazy, but I think a good idea, and I think worth it. And I want to try and do that next time as well. Anyway, so I saw this posted on Twitter. I've really been out of Twitter lately, but I've been trying to check it the past few days because I want to see people getting the books, and I have seen a few of those, which has been great. So Jim Zub posted this. I got tagged into this, and he's talking about crowdfunding. Jim Zub said, "I appreciate the vote of confidence. I am planning to do a crowdfunded, creator-owned project at some point. Fingers crossed for the future." Now I want to point out some of the nice responses from people. Yang Zan Zhao, who I know is a viewer, nice guy. I've streamed with him on his channel before. Super nice guy. I would check him out if you're looking for another great channel to subscribe to. His response was great. I'm looking forward to it, which was awesome. Comic Artist Pro Secrets, which is Ethan Van Sciver, he responded and he said, "Good luck to you. I hope you do great," which is another great response. Art T Bear, another professional who has run a couple of his own crowdfunding campaigns, he responded and said, "You got this, Jim." All great positive responses for somebody that is interested in crowdfunding a comic. My response to Jim Zub as well, I want to add to this, and that is, Jim Zub, yes, you're exactly the kind of person exactly that should be doing a crowdfunding campaign for your own comic book. And I will add too that Jim Zub has been very, very helpful to me over the past several years, probably more than he knows really. I think, he's watched a couple of my videos, and, I don't know, maybe he might think I'm a bit of a hooligan, but he's been helpful to me over the past few years. I've emailed him a few times. He's responded, answered questions. And then also his blog that he posts about comics and breaking into the industry has been very, very valuable. And he's one, I would say him and Jason Brubaker have both been very, very transparent about their process of making comics. And so whether you love Jim Zub or hate Jim Zub, his blog is very, very important. It's very good information, and anybody could learn from it. Having said that, crowdfunding is a little outside of Jim Zub's wheelhouse, at least as far as I'm aware of. I don't know that he's ever done a crowdfunding campaign before, but apparently he's thinking about doing it. So I wrote down a few tips for Jim Zub, and if he watches this, Jim, I really hope you listen to this, only because I got advice from you. So now here I am going to return the favor the best that I can. I had a crowdfunding campaign that was, by any metric, very successful. Before I get into these tips, you have to understand how money works. And, I'm not talking to Jim Zub specifically here, but anybody, how money works with crowdfunding. Making a comic book is very expensive. The more backers you get, the more books you have to buy, which is great. But at the same time, your costs do go up to some degree. Now, if you break a certain threshold, you start getting the returns are just much, much greater. So I passed the area where I was getting profit, and I did get some profit from my campaign, thank goodness, but it is nowhere near what you might think that it should be. When you see $31,607 with 924 backers, you think, man, that's a lot of money. That guy is going to be pretty happy. If you could do 2 of those a year, you would be making, over 60 grand a year, and you'd be just fine. That is not the reality. The reality is that I made a little over $4,000. It's probably like $4,500 off this campaign in technically profit, which is fantastic, and I don't want to diminish that whatsoever, but you might be surprised that it wasn't more. We're not talking about $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000. it is, a little over $4,000. I took $1,000 out of that and I bought myself a new computer so I could continue making YouTube videos, at the best quality that I can, and streaming and all sorts of stuff. So that $1,000 I think was well spent, and it helps me to continue and feed my machine. With the rest of the money, what am I doing with it? Well, it's going straight into Downcast 2 because I've already committed on doing it. And so this means that after all of the work, after the year of intense labor over this campaign, I don't really have money that I'm bringing home to my family. We're not paying off debt with it. We're not buying a car with it. We're not doing anything with it, but I am reinvesting that money. But was it worth it? Absolutely, it was worth it. And that's because I consider this the foundation of something else. I had to prove, and this is an important thing, people need to trust you. And so the best way that I can think of to get people to trust me is to do a complete campaign and, under promise and over deliver, do the absolute best work that I can, and try to make as many people happy as I possibly can. And in the future, I will be able to have a better answer to, was it worth it? All right, so for the tips now for Jim Zub or any other comic professional that's thinking about doing crowdfunding, first is important. You need a mailing list, you need an online presence, and you need to talk to regular people. Despite being a professional and working in comics already, you might think that you're going to pull those readers right over from, buying your books at the comic shop or online or however they're getting your books. You're going to be able to pull them over and they'll jump on to your campaign and back your book because they like you as your reader. That is simply not true. Now, you'll get some, don't get me wrong. You're going to get some. You have a name for yourself already, and that's great. That will make your road a little bit easier, probably not a lot, but it'll make it a little bit easier than it was for me or other independent creators, like I think of like Von Klaus, other creators that have really started in crowdfunding and that's how they made a name for themselves. Things are going to be a little bit easier for you, but all of the same principles still apply. You need to make a mailing list. This is true for an indie creator. It's also true for a professional creator. You have to give people a reason to have access to them. So, you got to start a landing page or something like that, get MailChimp, and offer people something for their email address. And that something is going to be free digital downloads of your books. If you own books, I know you do have a few creator-owned projects, give them the first issue for free or a full trade paperback for free, digital, something. And as well as anybody else, those things are being pirated all the time. Give something out for free in exchange for their email address. That is huge. The other thing you want to offer them is a discount. Even if it's not necessarily a discount, but it's like a pumped up secret perk, which you can do on Indiegogo. I don't think that Kickstarter has that ability. You could do something else on like the early bird stuff on Kickstarter, but you shouldn't. I don't think that's a good idea. And I'll get to why in a minute. The second tip is target your market. The nice thing about this is you don't really have to make a book that is completely digestible to the masses. You can actually target your audience very, very directly and find something that really excites them. If you understand who your target market is and who you're going after, make sure that aligns with who is willing to give you their email addresses. You got to have those two things aligned. So if you've got a crowd of people that just love your stuff, they're interested in more, what is it that they love about you so much? What is it that excites them the most? It might be one of your creator-owned projects. It might be, a story you've written for Marvel, something like that. It is going to be hugely, hugely important to think about that and figure out exactly what your target market wants and what you offer to them that is unique, and what they're most likely to want to back. That's sometimes a hard question to answer, but I think it's going to be easier for someone like Jim Zub because you already are in comics. You already have a readership available to you. All right, the next thing here is Indiegogo versus Kickstarter. I know that this becomes a big debate sometimes. I am a big advocate for Indiegogo. I don't think that you should use Kickstarter. Not even Jim Zub. You should use Kickstarter, and I'll tell you why. And this has nothing to do with ideological reasons or anything like that. It has everything to do with the numbers and with the business model itself. Kickstarter will collect backers, but it won't collect money until the end of the campaign. Indiegogo will collect money immediately. I think that this does not get talked about enough. I think it is huge though. On Kickstarter, people can back campaigns willy-nilly all the time, and they may or may not have their credit card charged at some point in the future. And so they're just waiting for that credit card to get charged. Often they'll forget that they even backed a campaign. They might be upset when they see the money leave their campaign. They might refund it. They might have a bad credit card and, it doesn't work or anything like that. There's all these number of things that can happen, and those will prevent backers from actually backing your book. On Indiegogo, they're charged immediately. And so it's just like a purchase. They buy it, the money is accounted for, it's out of their bank account. And while you might get some buyer's remorse in the future and people refunding campaigns, I can tell you from personal experience, it's not massive. The other thing is that you can open up an in-demand store with Indiegogo, and that's huge. I ended my campaign, where did I end it? At $26,000. Technically, that's where the campaign ended, with 746 backers, but I gained more backers. I gained about $5,000 more dollars, and around 300 more backers in that in-demand phase. That is huge. You are able to have it open for longer. And even if your book is finished completely ahead of time, I would honestly open up a in-demand store for like a week minimum. Kickstarter does not have this functionality. And so believe me, there are a lot of other reasons why I hate Kickstarter and why I think it's a bad idea to use them over Indiegogo. But just these two reasons alone are massive. They are absolutely game changers. They're decision makers. Really, you should be using Indiegogo. All right, the next one is deliver on time. This is massive, and a big part of this is building trust. All of this is about trust. People do not have the backing of Marvel or Image or any other publishers that you've worked with to give you some kind of trust and leeway because they trust those establishments. That trust is already automatically going to be massively diminished by you going at it as an independent creator. Now, I believe that Jim Zub, I believe that you can do this because I've already seen the hustle that you're able to do based on your blog, and initially how you got your own creator-owned stuff done through Image. I know that you can hustle. And so I'm sure that you're going to be able to get enough people that trust you at the core, but you got to get as many as you can. And so, being on time with everything, stating the date, the exact day that you're going to launch your campaign, and state that months in advance so everybody knows that it's coming, and make sure you launch on that date. Be on time. All right, this next one might be a little controversial, but I think it's important. I'm going to say very limited stretch goals and maybe even no stretch goals. Something that I learned from my own campaign on Indiegogo was that stretch goals can be really, really restrictive. Once you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And sometimes you have to find a way to make it work, even when it might not be something that important or that people backed the book for initially. One example is the foil stamp. I promised a foil stamp. That really restricted me because I could only use certain printers that could do foil stamps. It also restricted what kind of logo I could use. I know that sounds really in the weeds, but it's true. I had to have really defined lines on the logo. I had to, there are all these number of things that I was restricted on that wouldn't necessarily affect the quality of the book. Really, I don't think at all. But they were just because I made this promise that honestly, I think most backers were hyped about. They thought it was cool, but I don't think that it was a decision maker for anybody, or a decision breaker for that matter. And so what I'd much rather do is say from the get-go what you're going to get. If you want to extend the page count, if you hit a certain number, I think that's great. That's the only kind of stretch goal that I think makes a lot of sense. But again, you want to make sure you have some kind of limit on that kind of stretch goal. All the extra stuff, I honestly think it's better to just add it to the campaign if you feel like it. But I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, and feel free to do it in the comments below. But that is something I want to toy with a little bit more. All right, the next one is get it done early. If this is your first crowdfunding campaign, it is such a huge blow to be late. I went not insane, but I really bent over backward to make sure that I got my campaign not only done done on time, but done early. That is part of under promising and over performing. That was really important to me, and I wanted to try and do it as many ways as I possibly could. If your campaign is late, you will suffer for it because you're not accountable to an editor or anybody like that. The crowd is less forgiving than an editor might be. You could just get fired from a project that you have by an editor, but you're not going to get fired by that crowd. They are going to be on you until the end of time or until you fulfill your campaign. If you fulfill your campaign late, you're going to hear about it forever. So make sure you do not have your campaign go late. The best way to do that is to put some money in ahead of time and have as much of the book done beforehand as possible. I realize that often you need the money in order to make the book. I was in the same case. And with my next book, I'm not going to completely have all the money I need to get everything done because I've got a colorist to pay and a letterer and all that other stuff. But I can get much of it done ahead of time because of the profits. Regardless, what you do, when you put a date on your campaign as to when it's going to be finished, I think I put January, I believe. Yeah, I put January 2020. I was fulfilled November. I guess it's December 2nd, the last part of the campaign. So we'll say December. I'll be really, really generous here at the timeline. Either way, that is still at least a month early, if not 2 months early. This is really, really helpful, really, really important. Even if you have to set your date out far into the future, give yourself some buffer area. I cannot understate, this is important. I believe this is the foundation of all crowdfunding. All right, in my last bit of advice here, I honestly don't think that Jim Zub will have a problem with this in particular, but I do see this being overlooked often, and that is that the art sells the campaign. Yes, the art does sell the campaign, but your story does also sell the campaign. It's not one of those things where you just focus on the art and you ignore the story. You want to make sure you have a great pitch and remind yourself that you're not pitching it to an editor. You're not pitching it to a movie producer or anybody like that that's been in the business. You're pitching it to the average Joe. And so if you can make a video that makes your story sound cool to the average person that doesn't know anything about how pitches should be put together, if you can entice them and make them interested in your book, then that's just another way that you're going to capture more readers. Why not do both? So absolutely, I think you should do a video, just do a short pitch for your book, make it sound awesome. And yes, obviously as well, have awesome artwork that's also going to help you sell your campaign. So thank you so much. I'm sure I could think of some other advice, and I'll probably make videos in the future. Those were just the ones I thought of so far. Really appreciate everybody that backed Downcast. It's really cool to hop on Twitter and see people posting pictures. The mail system does work. People are getting the books. I love it so much. Let me know your comments below for Jim Zub if you have advice for him. And if you've gotten Downcast yet, let me know as well. If you haven't and you backed it, it should be coming to you very, very soon. So cannot wait to see what you all think. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time.